Hey girl, hey! I am Jamia Ponder, host and creator of The Mrs. Beside, a safe space dedicated to the real ones standing beside and never behind. Girl, this life ain't no joke. It's time, let's air it all out. Trust me, I understand. Whoo child, I know it's a lot. All right, welcome back, everybody. We have the incomparable, amazing, most magnificent Miss Lara McElderry with us on the show today, and I am over the moon excited because I absolutely adore her. Laura has been a great source of inspiration for me and has really helped and been pivotal in helping to get the Mrs. Beside off the ground and on its feet. So thank you for that, first of all, Laura, and thank you for taking the time to be here with me today and to bless our listeners with your wealth of knowledge. So,
well, thank you so much. It's awesome to be with you. And you did it. You did it, Jamia. I remember you reached out and you wanted to get this going, and good for you. You're doing it. This is so fun.
Yeah, your guidance was bar none. So I know we'll get to towards the end and you'll be able to tell everybody where they can find you and all that good stuff. But Lara's coaching I vouch for it. I am a product of it and I believe in it wholeheartedly. She's great at what she does. So little shameless plug there.
I love it. Thank you. I'll just come on your show anytime. You're going to build me up like this. I love it.
Everybody needs a good gassing every now and again.
Heck
so I asked Laura to be on the show because I wanted to talk to her about how she balances it all. As moms and as wives, we have to balance a ton. But Laura, maybe give us a little bit about yourself for those of us who don't know who you are, and then we can jump into how we tip those scales.
Sure. So I am Lara McElderry. I love guacamole. I love white cheese dip. I also love my 5 boys and my husband, Josh. We've been married almost 19 years now. Oh my goodness. So we have a little history there.
Yeah.
He is a trauma surgeon in Missouri. And with that came 5 different states that we lived in during training and school and education. And we'll probably discuss this in the interview, what that meant for me and my career aspirations that came more like career little poofs that seem to be floating away, just gone in the wind, trying to keep up with myself, the children, his career and everything. But I am a life coach. I do a lot of relationship coaching, but I also love business coaching, personal life coaching, all those kinds of things, and really helping people reframe some of their thinking to better serve themselves.
Well, you do a great job. And again, thanks for being here. So when you talk about having to move, so first of all, to become a trauma surgeon, okay, so you're talking about 4 years of medical school. And then how long is it? Is it 6 years for a surgery residency?
It's 5 years general surgery residency. And then he did a fellowship in critical care past that. And those can be 1 or 2 years. So we lived in several states. My husband also changed his mind at one point. So we went from surgery to pathology, back to surgery. And then he took a job, and then he did a fellowship. So we do not have a straight path. And there have been lots of ups and downs and what's in our marriage.
And I would like to point out you are still married. So
we are still married.
Hence the relationship advice.
Yeah.
That's
lots
a lot
of personal experience to draw on for sure.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about having moved that many times, that many years of support, right? So that's 10, 11 years-ish. Yeah. And in that time, you have 5 children. And I know that in every stage, right, it looks a little bit different. Self-care is going to look little bit different along the way. But how did you manage it all? I know the boys are bigger now and the work doesn't necessarily change, but it's not diapers and, and midnight feedings and all that kind of stuff. So how did you manage it all during that time with a husband who was largely absent? For those of y'all that don't know, a surgery rotation is not a joke. So 5 years of that with 5 children, please do tell.
Yeah, it's a lot. Isn't that one of your slogans, Jimmy?
It's a lot. It's a lot. Okay?
It's a lot.
Good grief.
Yeah, number 5 was born during surgery residency. And, it was a lot. He was very well planned and intentional, but it did feel like a lot. As far as how I balanced it all, to be quite honest, I would say I didn't balance it all. I just didn't. I could not do it all. So instead of balancing it all, I had to pick and choose what I was going to do at that particular moment in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is so much pressure on individuals, especially females, to quote unquote have it all or do it all. And I love that. I am all about my career, and I still have, business goals, and I still have things that I want to do that help me, feel alive and feel like I have my own identity. But there are times in life when if you're trying to do it all, you end up giving like 20% to each thing, and you end up like you're failing at everything that you are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely gone that route, and that didn't work well for me. So what I found worked better was to do fewer things and focus on them.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a time when the only thing I was doing was really raising those kids. And that was a hard time because I had all these other interests. It wasn't like my mind shut down.
Right.
It wasn't like I suddenly didn't want to do more, but that's where my focus needed to be. And that was further complicated because in medical school, one of our kiddos actually had a brain tumor.
Oh,
so there wasn't anything happening but taking care of the kid, making sure, and the other kids, making sure Josh was, passing his classes and just kind of hanging on for dear life. And I think sometimes we go through those and we kind of look at that as like, well, maybe that was a failure because I wasn't working, or I didn't have this amazing side gig. I wasn't like, running marathons or blogging, or
right,
I was just getting by. But I think we need to give ourselves a little more grace than that and just recognize that there are times and seasons in our lives, and that it's okay if we cannot be all things to all people.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I have learned, Jamia, too, is how to say no.
That's a big one.
I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I am a whole lot better at what I commit to, what I say yes and no to, and honestly, what I even feel obligated to do.
Yeah.
I used to feel like, well, I have to be at the homeroom party.
Right.
Because I need a picture of my kid at their Valentine's party, or else I'm a big fail, right? I have let a lot of that kind of stuff go. It has been very freeing for me. I feel like a better human. I feel like I have more energy. I feel like I'm a better parent for my kids when they do come home from school. So learning how to be honest in what we really value and what we really want to do with our time goes a long, long way. But they're not easy lessons. We're talking years that I've come to these conclusions. I still don't have it mastered. I still have days where I'm like, well, I feel like I failed today, either in my business or with my kids or with my husband. Like, it's not a home run all the time, but it can still be good even when it's not perfect.
Yeah. And I think you make a great point about learning how to say no, because in the age of Pinterest momming, you feel like, you got to measure up to a certain standard, but you have to ask yourself, where does this stuff come from? Like, who said you had to do all of that? I remember I would try to, make sure I would wash all the clothes and change all the linen and take care of the kids and cook the meals and clean the kitchen and clean the bathrooms and sweep the floors and steam mop the floor. Like, who said I had to do all of that? I conditioned my family to where they did not have to do that, but nobody ever said, Jamia, these are your responsibilities. You must do them. I was putting that on myself because I felt like that's what made me a better mom. Heck no, it made me irritable as crap by the end of the night because I'm exhausted picking up behind kids like all day. So, I mean, you do have to figure out where are like your non-negotiables. What are you okay with? Are you okay with if the laundry doesn't get folded, but you literally can't sleep if there are dishes in the sink? What are your non-negotiables, and let those things go? Because I can't imagine having a baby that's sick and a husband that's gone, a large majority of the time. No, can't imagine it. So, and I know sometimes people are like, how did you do it all? It's like, you just do. That's the only
one day at a time, right? One day at a time is sometimes the best answer that we have. And it's not always the most comforting answer. It's not necessarily what people want to hear when they're in the thick of it, but that is life. Life is full of disappointments. Right now with COVID going on, I think everyone can recognize, hey, everyone's disappointed because of COVID. Everybody has something that is some kind of disappointment, whether it was a wedding, a graduation, a vacation, a job promotion, something.
Right.
Like everyone has been affected. But on the grander scheme of life, like that is life. Like we all have disappointments. We all have times when, well, at least I'm assuming, I guess, I know I had like all kinds of ideas of what marriage would be like.
Whoa. And you get in it and you're like, what the fuck?
I'm like, okay, so what are we doing here? But again, just because something isn't perfect doesn't mean that it can't be good. It doesn't mean that we can't find the happiness and joy that's available to us.
Yeah.
And sometimes we won't be happy with good. We want, it wasn't good enough. And I think those are self-imposed.
And finding the joy in the journey. So in each phase, being able to really enjoy that and not wishing the time away, right? Because there will be one day when your kids get older or you're out of this season of life and you're like, man, I really wish I had been more present mentally, not just physically, like roboting it, but really finding the joy in each one of those phases, as difficult as they may be, as sucky as it may be, as tired as you may be, finding some piece of joy in that. So I love that. But I also know that with some of that can come some guilt, like when you do learn to say no, or, you are trying to set limitations and boundaries. Did you experience having some guilt surrounding that, like not going to the Valentine's Day party because you absolutely have to get X done? Or, did you ever experience guilt with that?
Yeah, of course. I think there's like a hormone connection or something when you give birth to a child or when you adopt a child or when you become responsible for another human. Guilt comes with it. 100%.
Pre-wired.
Yes, guilt comes with it. And it starts, when they're very young. You're like for me, breastfeeding didn't work out. So there we go, right off the bat. Like my perfect motherhood world was ruined forever, but I want to assure all the young mothers out there that my children are fine. Did formula make them bigger? Maybe. My oldest is 6'4", but you know what? It's fine.
That might have been pre-wired anyway, breast milk or not.
I'm just saying, like, there's so many things. Seriously, from the time they are born, there is an opinion about every move you make.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I think for a lot of women, we just get exhausted. And now that I am a little over 40, I feel a lot better. I think middle age is where it's at because you start to finally go, really? That's how you think? Okay, do your thing. But you I don't have the same guilt that I had in my 20s and early 30s. I really don't. I think I'm just like, it's funny because when I let go of the guilt of me, I also let go of all the judging I did of other people. And I'm embarrassed to admit that. But let's be honest, like a lot of that guilt is because not only are we not doing it, but we also think everyone else should be doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel guilty. I'm not reading with my kid 30 minutes a night. But the truth is, I think all parents should be doing that. And now I'm like, I don't get the reading done and I'm doing the best I can. And I don't care if anyone else is doing. I haven't even thought about anyone else in a long time.
Now I'm like, I turn on the subtitles on the TV. Boom, they're reading.
And I know how important reading is, but that's just an example of like, it's like, it's really freeing when you give yourself permission.
Yeah.
It really does kind of like just make you a kinder person and less judgmental of others.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the truth is nobody can do it all. They say never judge a book by its cover, but you never don't ever feel envious. Like the mom that you think has it all together, she doesn't either. Seriously, like for real. None of us have it all together. I don't care how pretty she's put together. There are areas where we all struggle. So we're all doing the best that we can. So I think to be kinder to ourselves and give ourselves more grace, to your point, it is freeing. But it's so funny, like you say, oh, middle age is where it's at. Like I just think of the little old grandmas that just say whatever the heck comes to their mind. It's like they don't care. It's like I've gotten to this point in my life, you can go eat a brick. You can go eat a brick. I don't care what you think about anything I got to say right now. But speaking of like being free, so you take care of your husband. I'm sorry, you take care of your kids and, you're exhausted by the end of the day, or at least I know I am most days. And I get in the bed, like I just want to get in the bed. Like I just want to sit there and unwind. And lo and behold, I still have a need to meet.
I think I'm reading between the lines here of what you're saying. He's not on nights.
I'm like, no. So for me, it was letting some of those other things go during the day, right? And asking, which was irritating, asking for what I needed. Because I'm like, you see these kids, they need a bath. They get a bath every day. They get dinner every day. These are the bare minimums. Why do I have to ask you to help me with that? And then when I get in the bed, no, you get in the bed 30 minutes before I do while I'm still picking up out here. And, you're all comfy and underneath the covers and you got the fan on. And now I get in the bed and you're like, are you tired? What? Are you insane? Of course I'm tired.
I'm sure you've seen those memes and cartoons where it's like, wife says she's going to bed and then it's like 20 things she's got to do, right?
Correct.
Like prepare the school lunch and turn off all the lights and bathe the kid or whatever. And the husband says he's going to bed and he goes to bed.
Like legitimately. Teeth, right? He takes a shower and he gets in the bed. He's like, yes, this is perfect. I don't know why you can't just go right to bed.
And of course, that's not 100% true. I don't want to be too gender stereotypical, but there is a whole lot of truth to it.
Yeah, in my house. I'll just talk about me then. But how do you manage to keep, it is very important in those seasons and in those times to still feed your relationship because it is a relationship and there are certain things that the both of you need. And so how do you manage in those tough times to do that, right? You haven't seen each other all day. He's been working, 17 hours. He's stressed, not to diminish it, but 5 kids at home, you're stressed. Okay. I'm stressed too.
It's true. It's true. And it's almost unfair that at least in my anecdotal world of talking to other physician spouses, because that's a space I know best, I can say that sex for most men, it relaxes them. It kind of calms them down and they feel like they can better handle life. It's also kind of like a confidence booster. They're just like, it's a positive for them. For women, it can be a positive too, but we're kind of the opposite. We kind of need the confidence before we're in the mood to have sex. That's why women like to look pretty, right? We want to have the confidence ahead of time to go forward with the sex. We also, want to feel rested and feel like things are in order before sex. So, it is true that if your house is clean, if your room is clean, that's why sometimes going to a hotel room works for people, right? Because you get there, there's no responsibility and it's clean. Right. And you don't have to get up and go start dinner or, check on the baby or anything. And that's why it takes all that responsibility off of the women's shoulders.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why that whole idea of let's go get a hotel room often works. As far as on a personal level, I know you're laughing.
I mean, it's true though. It's true. Like a hotel room and one candle can drastically change things. I get that.
The change of scenery, the change of it's not all, you're not at home where you feel the weight of that. It's like on a smaller scale, people say things like, it's good if you don't have your office in your bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a situation where the computer was in the corner of the bedroom and that's where I paid all the bills. And that's where I did, work stuff and checked on the grades that the kids made. And all of those things happened there on that computer. And that isn't exactly like allowing my mind to shut down enough.
Yeah.
I glance over there and see it. And so on a practical level, if there are things you can do to set up an environment, where you can kind of take your mind off of those responsibilities because they can kind of be a libido killer, if you will. And then I just think sometimes in a marriage, honestly, you just have to say no. And you have to say yes.
Yeah.
And I can't tell anyone when to say which. All I can say is that I've said both.
Yeah.
And I think communication is important. I think mutual respect is important. I don't think it's fair for it to only be when the woman is in the mood. I don't think it's fair for it to be every time. And I'm, again, gender stereotyping, but typically the male has a higher libido, not always for sure. But, it's also not fair to feel obligated to meet his every need or every desire. So I think the best marriages are those where both partners express their needs, their wants, and where both partners are willing to, compromise sometimes and sometimes it goes vice versa,
But I feel like too, I know for us, there were times and sometimes still are times where I feel like I'm always the one that has to sort of bend. It's like I have to meet his need before I can get my need met. And it can be very frustrating because I'm like, why do I have to be the one to give? I don't say give in, right? Because there's always times. It should be both parties giving 100%, but it's often me that has to do the bending more times than not, and not just in the area of sex, but like if we move or if I have to change jobs or if quite naturally if he's at the hospital and a kid gets sick at school when there was school.
Fingers crossed, everybody, for the fall.
I said that with a major attitude just then. But, if a kid was sick, I got to go get them, and so just that whole repetitive nature of feeling like you have to be the one to bend can get kind of old. So do you have any tips and tricks for how to get past that? I know a lot of it is a mental thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. It can be a mental thing because it's really in what you think about it, right? If you think, so let me back up a little bit. I loved the classroom. I used to teach English as a second language, and I loved my population of kiddos that I worked with. I loved my coworkers. Honestly, I had my dream job. At 24, 25. And I could have stayed at that junior high and retired there. And I would have loved it. I was in my element in that classroom. And when Josh was accepted to medical school, that meant a move to Little Rock, which was like 4 hours away from where we were.
Mm-hmm.
So that job wasn't staying with me. It felt like that was a time when I had to bend, and it was. But as I've looked back on my life, because that wasn't the first job I gave up, right? I later would give up another teaching job, and I would later give up a third. And so here's the thing, like, we often feel we don't have the choice because we have to bend. But if you look at it more literal, I didn't have to. I chose to. I could have said, a few years into that marriage, I'm keeping my job and you can go to Little Rock and go to med school if you want. And we can either live long distance or we can get a divorce or we can do something. But I chose the marriage.
Yeah.
So I have to remember that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, I think, are raised with the concept of you should never think of divorce. Divorce is never an option. And I think that advice is given kind of with the intention of like, well, if you don't consider it, then you won't get one. And, I get what they're saying, but I like to spin that on people's heads and say, you know what? Divorce is always an option. This is 2020. You can go get a divorce for any old reason you want. You don't have to have a reason. You can have a no-fault divorce and you can get one done pretty cheap and you are not stuck.
Yeah.
Right? Like ultimately, you are making the decision to stay in that relationship.
Right.
And so when I take a step back and I look at it like that, it takes some of that resentment away. Right? Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't had hard times or times when I felt like, well, here we go again. It's all about Josh. It's all about his career. It's what he wants to do. It's on his timing. He gets to figure out what he wants to be when he grows up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just follow him around like a dutiful woman would. And that is not a good vibe. That doesn't promote equality in the marriage. That doesn't promote a feeling of partnership. And I would encourage anyone feeling that way to start owning it more and to just admit that they are choosing that marriage and that they do, in fact, have options. People live long distance, people make all kinds of decisions to make different types of relationships work. Yeah. And so I think, we do have to own that and then not let ourselves become victims of it, right? Like that's who we want to be with. And I'm glad I'm with Josh. I made the right choices, but I still get a little disappointed sometimes about that teaching job, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, because it's a normal emotion. You are sad when you have to part with some of those things, but jobs or, areas you really loved living in, friends that you had in that area and all of those things. But you're right. You do make the choice, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. And I think that too, when you say life is about disappointments or life is full of them, life is also full of choices. And my mom always used to say, every choice you make has a consequence. It can either be good or it can be bad, but there is a consequence to every choice that you make. And so just making sure that, you guys come together and that you're comfortable with that decision. But you're right, it doesn't make it easy. And it does feel like it's all about you, like all the time. Mm-hmm. I want it to be about me, made about me.
I know.
But
I know. It can be really hard when you're a physician spouse or anyone. Like my sister is married to a small business owner. He owns his own shop. And so then everything becomes about when the shop needs to be open and when the shop can close down. And, there's just a lot of situations, where that's the case.
But I think then too, when you do have a spouse that has something that's demanding and it can feel like it's all about that in those moments too, that you choose you. So, you chose something that you're also passionate about that you could do from where you are, right? So you're a podcaster, businesswoman of the year-ish thing, but no, so you have a podcast and, you help. I don't even know. I don't even want to guess the number of thousands of women that you've touched through your podcast, but now you have that. And so I think in every phase, try to find something that is for you that, even if you guys had to move to Alaska, you can still do your podcast from Alaska, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about that and maybe how your podcast came about.
Yeah, it really did come about because I wanted something that could move with us. My husband had started a job as an attending physician, which means he was all the way through with his education, for those of you that aren't medical listening in. And we learned pretty early on that job was not going to be a good fit for him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge disappointment because we had bought, the nice home and we had gotten our kids in school, and the intention was to settle down finally.
Right.
And when that job didn't work out, I hit a low. I hit a disappointment because I felt like everything that we'd been working for, the rug just got pulled out from underneath us. And what was the point? And then my husband, bless his heart, he came to me and he said this was, several months, and he could have kept that job, but we both knew that it wasn't a good fit. So we were on the same page there. But at the same time, he came to me and he goes, well, not at the same time, but a few months later, after he had been job searching again, he said, all the jobs I really want require a fellowship. And I was like, now, for those of you that aren't aware, surgeons make six figures, fellows make teacher salary, the
Correct.
higher end of teacher salary as a fellow, like $67K or something like that during that year. And I was like, we're going to go back to that. And why? Like, aren't you happy yet? I really felt frustrated. Like, we've given, you should be happy. So anyways, I really hit a low. I was really struggling with kind of feeling like we got ripped off with the job not working out, and also feeling like it was one more thing being asked of me, like we were talking about, So we ended up moving across the country, this time to New Mexico, where we had no connections, friends, family, no one, just this big desert.
Oh dear.
We ended up loving Albuquerque. But while in Albuquerque, I was like, we're not going to be here long enough for me to even get my license here and think about working.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my youngest was going to be in pre-K full time, and I wanted to do something. I'm like, what am I going to do? Sit at the house while all my kids are at school? Now, I know for some of you, you're like, yes, I would love a day to sit at the house. And I like those days too, but I didn't want, a school year of them.
Right.
And I was like, I've got to do something. And so that's when the podcast came about, because it was on my mind what I was going through as a physician spouse. And I'm like, I cannot be the only one. I was an avid podcast listener and I didn't find any podcasts on it. And there's some things on the internet and it's growing all the time. More and more people are talking about it all the time. But, back at the end of 2017, there was not as much discussion about being in a physician family. Yeah. So I just decided I would start the conversation and see what happened. And it ended up that I loved podcasting. And so I've kept it going now for over 2 years, coming on 3.
Yeah. It's great. It's great, by the way. You guys are going to listen to it, I'm sure, after this interview. So while we're on the podcast subject, why don't you just go ahead and tell us where we can listen to you? And then I'll ask that closing question, the old question that I ask each guest that I have on the show. But yeah, go ahead and tell us where we can listen to your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find it wherever you're listening to this one. Just search for Married to Doctors. You can also listen on my website, which is just marriedtodoctors.com.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And you guys will likely find me on there in a little while. Well, actually, I'm already on there from a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. You were on there a while back. I was looking, I think you were like episode 54 maybe. And I'm now on like 140 something. So it's been a while, almost 90 something episodes ago, but you were on there.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah. And you'll be coming up soon too. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I can't wait. So as we close out, I want to ask, what does the Mrs. Beside mean to you?
So to be the Mrs. Beside to me really means if you pictured a couple walking down the road and you put your elbow, through your spouse's elbow, like it's okay to swing on their arm. It is not okay to feel like you are an extension of their arm, if you will. I don't know if that makes any sense, but what I'm trying to say is like, you should never feel that you're an appendage to your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people find that their identity, like, I don't want my identity to be I'm Josh's wife.
Right.
I don't want my identity to be I'm the surgeon's wife. I married a surgeon. Like I want to be my own self 100%, like worthy and giving and contributing. And I will stand by my man and walk down the sidewalk with him and willingly lock elbows with him, but as a partner, not as an extension of him.
Right.
And I think that makes us stronger as a couple. I think when I show up as my true, authentic self, I'm more attractive to him. I'm more interesting person. I'm more fun to be around. I'm more in integrity with myself. I like myself better. People enjoy me better. And so I just feel it's important that we show up 100% us and then walk beside.
Yeah. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Well, Lara, again, I appreciate you so much for taking the time to be with me today and blessing our listeners with your expertise that you have gathered over the last 19 years and really taking your time again to be here with me. I so appreciate you.
Yeah, 100%. This was a blast. Congratulations on your show.
Thank you. We will see you guys next time. Bye.